Hi, everyone. My name is Devon. I'm with the Worcester Public Library.
And I'm Joy, also with the Worcester Public Library.
And today we're going to tell you about new releases for August. Some of these books have already come out because we're doing this video a little bit later in the first week of August, but it's still worth a watch. Since the books are very new, most of what we're talking about, there's only a print record in the catalog, but these are highly reviewed titles, so chances are they'll also be in overdrive and they'll be very soon. So now I'm going to share my screen so that you can see what books we have lined up for you for today. Okay, as usual, I'll be focusing on the fiction and Joy will do the nonfiction.
So I guess I go first.
Yes, ma'am.
My first choice for this month is All the Frequent Troubles of Our Days, the true story of the American woman at the heart of the German resistance to Hitler by Rebecca Donner. Born and raised in Milwaukee, Mildred Harnack was 26 and enrolled in a PhD program in Germany, where she witnessed the meteoric rise of the Nazi Party. In 1932, she and her German husband, Arvin, began holding secret meetings in their apartment, bringing together a small group of left-leaning political activists that by 1940 had become a large, well-organized underground resistance group known by its opponents as the Red Orchestra. Orchestra being a German term for any group of people, not just musicians who work together in harmony. Mildred recruited working-class Germans into the movement, helped Jews escape, plotted works of sabotage, and collaborated in writing and distributing leaflets that denounced Hitler and called for revolution. Some members of the group went further and actively engaged in espionage on behalf of the Soviet Union. It did not take long for the German authorities to uncover the Red Orchestra's activities, and on September 7th, 1942, on the eve of her escape to Sweden, she and Arvin were arrested and tried for treason. Initially, a German military court sentenced her to 6 years in prison. When Hitler himself intervened, however, the verdict was overturned and she was sentenced to death. Mildred Fish Harnack was beheaded by guillotine on the 16th of February, 1943. In All the Frequent Troubles of Our Days, Mildred's great-grandniece, Rebecca Donner, tells the story of this courageous woman in immersive detail for the first time, using material drawn from archival collections, family papers, diaries, letters, declassified documents, and other sources. The result of her labors blends biography, political thriller, and detective story into a page-turner that, in the words of PW, is standout history not to be missed, and a stunning achievement. The reviewer from Library Journal recommends All the Frequent Troubles of Our Days to all of us who enjoyed Erik Larson's In the Garden of Beasts.
Wow, that's interesting. They're comparing this to In the Garden of Beasts. I know Erik Larson's really popular.
He really is. And this is yet another addition to this new canon of works on women who were involved in the resistance to Hitler, one way or another.
And it is a nonfiction thing I'm being dragged into slowly. So
yes, I know.
All right, here's my first nonfiction choice. The Turnout by Megan Abbott. This one just came out on August 3rd. It's a most anticipated title of the year, according to Entertainment Weekly, The Millions, and LitHub. This book made it on even more lists for books you need to read this summer, and lists for most anticipated thrillers and crime fiction. The Turnout has a tinge of horror in it, and it's recommended for fans of Black Swan and The Red Shoes. With their long necks, matching buns, and pink tights, sisters Dara and Marie have been dancers since they can remember. Growing up, they were homeschooled and trained by their mother, founder of the Durant School of Dance. After their parents' death in an accident nearly 12 years ago, the sisters began running the school together, along with Charlie, Dara's husband. Marie teaches the younger students, Dara trains the older ones, and Charlie rules the back office. When a studio fire occurs, just at the beginning of the annual performance of the Nutcracker, a repairman threatens the sisters' delicate balance. This book got starred reviews from Publishers Weekly, Library Journal, and Booklist. Reviewers say the story has hints of James M. Cain and Alfred Hitchcock. LitHub says, the turnout unfolds like a dark fairy tale, unpacking the rigid demands of femininity. Abbott fans and suspense lovers alike won't be disappointed with this exploration of human frailty and twisted love. So I've never read Megan Abbott before, but the fact that they're comparing this to James M. Cain and Alfred Hitchcock, I'm likely going to be picking this one up soon. And here's one from Joy.
I've read a lot of Megan Abbott and I love her. And there is nothing in this description that would prevent me from like running out to get it immediately if I could.
Oh, I didn't know you liked her. That's good to
know.
know.
She's so good.
Awesome.
Modern noir. Okay, my next choice is The Viking Heart, How Scandinavians Conquered the World by Arthur Herman. Scandinavia has always been a world apart, maybe even a bit of a backwater. For millennia, Norwegians, Danes, Swedes, and Finns lived a remote existence among the fjords and forests of the land of the midnight sun. But when they left their homeland in search of adventure and opportunity, boy, did they make their presence known. These wanderers and expert seafarers, beginning with the much maligned Vikings, have reshaped Western history. Their ingenuity, daring, resiliency, loyal to family and community, and willingness to venture far from home have propelled them to the steppes of Russia, the rivers of France, the gates of Rome, the courts of Constantinople, and yes, the plains of North Dakota. Author, Norwegian American, and Pulitzer Prize finalist Arthur Herman has given us a comprehensive history of the different tribal groups who would eventually be identified as Scandinavians. He repudiates the reprehensible adoption of medieval Scandinavian motifs by white supremacists, pointing out the genetic diversity of contemporary Scandinavians and noting that the very idea of race would have been incomprehensible to those they claimed to emulate. He highlights the contributions made to American culture and history by Scandinavian immigrants and their descendants, including Union veterans of the Civil War, Coach Knut Rockne, poet Carl Sandburg, and sociologist Thorsten Veblen. Kirkus says that The Viking Heart is a fine history of a people who deserve more attention, and as a Swede, I can say amen to that. LJ calls this book engaging and accessible and an excellent armchair read. Booklist calls it a well-researched and again, engaging tome. Shelve this book with Herman's other work, How the Scots Invented the Modern World, and Thomas Cahill's The Gifts of the Jews.
You don't see many nonfiction books about Vikings out, so hopefully this is a good one.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you would because you're Swedish.
Yes, once again, I'm a Swede.
All right, here's my next fiction choice. Stephen King. His newest book is Billy Summers. This one also came out on August 3rd. If you're keeping track, Stephen King has written 63 novels, 5 nonfiction books, and over 200 short stories. This, of course, is his newest work. When Billy was 12 years old, he killed his mother's boyfriend after he kicked Billy's sister to death. At 17, he enlisted in the army. At 18, he was a sniper in Iraq and involved in the deadly battle to recapture Fallujah. For nearly 20 years, he's worked as an assassin. He's a good guy in a bad job, and he wants out. At age 44, he takes on a complicated but lucrative job he hopes will be his last. He's got a perfect new identity lined up and a flawless escape plan. But then something happens that changes everything. A stranger needs rescuing, and Billy sacrifices the safety of his own new life to offer her protection. This book got starred reviews from Booklist, Publishers Weekly, and Kirkus. As in several King novels, the main character is a writer, but first he's a hitman, so expect violence to appear early in the story and continue throughout. Reviewers are saying this book is a page turner and a hard-boiled noir thriller, but it doesn't have much that's supernatural. There is a very brief reference in the middle that fans of The Shining will appreciate, but that's it for the paranormal and supernatural for this book. Booklist said, King has multiple novels in play here: thriller, at least 2 coming-of-age stories, and a knockout road novel. And he knits them together beautifully, never missing a stitch. King has never been better than he is here at wrapping readers into a propulsive, many-tentacled narrative, complete with a perfectly orchestrated ending. I haven't read any non-horror stories by Stephen King, but this one does sound pretty good, so I'll probably be reading this one as well. Here's another from Joy.
Boy, that guy just keeps on going. He reinvents himself constantly, which is something I so respect.
Yeah, he's definitely a powerhouse.
Definitely. Okay, my last choice for this month is The Irish Assassins, Conspiracy, Revenge, and the Phoenix Park Murders that Stunned Victorian England by journalist and biographer Julie Kavanagh. In 1882, Lord Frederick Cavendish and Thomas Burke, secretary and undersecretary, respectively, for Ireland, were stabbed to death in Dublin's Phoenix Park. The assassination, funded by American advocates for Irish independence, was particularly tragic and ill-timed. A spirit of goodwill had been developing between British Prime Minister William Gladstone and Irish leader Charles Stewart Parnell, and both men were committed to forging a pact to achieve eventual independence for Ireland. Cavendish and Burke were expected to play an instrumental role in the process, and when they died, so did the hope for a peaceful resolution to centuries of conflict between England and Ireland. Furthermore, the impact of the Phoenix Park murders would set in motion repercussions that would linger into the 21st century. This book garnered a host of rave reviews on both sides of the Atlantic. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair praised The Irish Assassins as a fascinating, beautifully written account. LJ and Booklist gave it starred reviews. Booklist says that it's entertaining, informative, and overall stellar writing. LJ calls it an essential choice for anyone wishing to understand modern Irish history. And of course, one can't help but wonder how the trajectory of that history might have been altered if the Irish assassins had had a change of heart.
Yeah, I have to say that definitely occurred to me when I was reading about this book. You know, one act and it's affecting Ireland and everyone all these centuries later.
A single act, can turn the tide.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, here's my last pick for this week. I'm super excited about this one. It's a new Silvia Moreno-Garcia book, Velvet Was the Night. It's coming out on August 17th. Though the author now lives in Vancouver, she sets most of her stories in her homeland of Mexico, like this one, which takes place in 1970s Mexico City. Maite is a 30-year-old secretary who lives for one thing, the latest issue of Secret Romance. While student protests and political unrest consume the city, Maite escapes into stories of passion and danger. Meanwhile, her neighbor, Lenora, seems to live a life of intrigue and romance. When Lenora disappears, Maite searches for the missing woman, journeying deeper into Lenora's secret life of radicals and dissidents. There is also a man named Elvis who is looking for Lenora at the behest of his boss, El Mago, a shadowy figure who commands goon squads dedicated to squashing political activists. When Lenora disappeared, So did some photos that El Mago desperately wants. As these characters search for Lenora, readers will meet a host of leftist activists, artists, secret police officers, an antique store owner, and more. This book got starred reviews from Publishers Weekly, Library Journal, and Kirkus. It's told through the dual viewpoints of Maite and Elvis. And if you're one of those people who imagines a soundtrack to the book that they're reading, look for Penguin Random House on Spotify. They have a soundtrack just for this book, and it's being called Perfection. Publishers Weekly said, this seductive neo-noir thriller draws on the real-life efforts of the Mexican government to suppress political dissent in the 1970s. It's a rich novel with an engrossing plot, distinctive characters, and a touch of romance. Readers won't be able to put it down. So this one isn't horror, like I know she tends to write, but it's definitely noir, and I love learning more about Mexico when I read her stories. So obviously, I'm very much looking forward for this one. But that brings us to the end of our episode for today. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget, if you've enjoyed our show, to give us some likes, some loves, and you can share this video with your friends who are also looking for great new books to read. Otherwise, thanks for watching.
See you later, fellow readers.